Stop. I can't take it anymore.
Oh, I do the live ones too. Yes, I know. I saw your act in the theater. You're really quite good.
Quite a certain harmful habit.
Hello and welcome. We are breaking up with our bullshit. This is episode 4. I am Tawny Santabria.
And I am JDK Winnikin, and we are here to debunk the junk.
Hashtag debunking. Well, I don't want to change it. Debunk the junk.
We can come up with as many hashtags as we like.
Yes.
It's really, that's the one of the fun parts of doing this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, welcome to episode 4, everybody. Everybody out there viewing, everybody out there listening. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks for all the amazing feedback you've been giving us. It's been a really fun ride so far, hasn't it?
It has been so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of good stuff.
Lots of good stuff. You did not have a fun ride on the way over here, though.
No fun. No fun on the way over here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty bad accident. Stuck on the freeway with a closed down freeway. You don't go very far or fast on a closed freeway.
It's actually somewhat prohibitive of moving forward.
Yeah. And I kept watching the map, and it kept adding my time to my ETA.
Oh, it's the worst thing.
Yes.
It's the worst thing. And I know for you are known for always arriving early. Unlike me, who's always known for just arriving.
I'll get there when I get there. Yeah. So I was doing a lot of softening in the car on the way over here.
I bet.
Oh, yeah.
I bet. Do stories come up for you with that stuff? Like, what's going to happen if we're late? Is it that concrete, or is it just kind of gets your body?
Yeah,
tense?
it just gets my body tense. It's that stress of like, it was supposed to happen, that I would get there and sort of ease into what comes next, right? And if you're stuck and you can't, or late, it's difficult to ease into what comes next.
It is. And it kind of threw off our pre-show routine a little bit.
Yeah.
Right. Which can feel weird.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, and yet here we are. What comes out comes out.
Yep. What comes up comes up.
Comes up. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So last week, I mean, we really dove in last time, right? In episode 3, we did a practice. We ended up talking about a number of things. We invented a word, bullshould.
We did. That was so exciting.
That was fun.
I used it so much too.
Oh, did you?
Over the week. Oh yeah. I was telling everybody about bullshits. They're just like looking at me like, okay, whatever. But I think they liked it.
Yeah, it works. Right. It works. And we talked mostly about, those things about ourselves. I should be at this point in life, or shouldn't I feel better than I do, or those types of things. And so it was really fun, and really we covered a lot. Anything in retrospect stand out to you, or any feedback that you got that you noticed?
I don't know about feedback in particular. Like, a lot of people related to all the shoulds that we have, right? And that it has a toll. It takes a toll on them. So, and I think people don't want them as much as maybe they didn't realize they don't want them as much. And we pointed it out, and people are paying a bit more attention to the shoulds.
Yeah. And I'm hoping, and some of the feedback that I got, where some people mentioned that they didn't realize that shoulds were a thing you could get rid of.
Oh, yeah.
That you could break up with. That you don't have to have them.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of curiosity about, what is that like? Like, could their minds and bodies stay settled if they didn't have a should?
Right. And would they even be motivated to do anything without the should? Like,
right, like, would you just sit there like Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi?
Right.
Right. Eating weird frog things.
Right. Nobody wants to do that.
No, nobody wants to lay around and eat weird frog things because they don't have any shoulds.
Maybe for a few minutes.
All right. Yeah.
Just not all day.
Got right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it was, I had a really similar thing. A lot of people said to me, wow, yeah, that the bullshit is a good word, and all that. What other people noticed was something that I noticed, that when we did the practice, I'm in here, I get really amped up and really excited. You can hear it in my voice. You can see I fidget in my chair. And after the practice, people noticed, both listening and watching, that there was a very clear softening of me. And I felt it at the time, and the tone of my voice shifted. It was calmer. I was more relaxed in my seat. And it was very much sounded different because it was coming from a different place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that people saw that.
Yes.
I'm really glad that was evident.
Yes.
Because it is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I noticed. So, and I did better with interesting, and that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Okay,
better. You did better.
Some people thought we were making up a problem that wasn't there. Which I thought was.
I thought that was interesting too. That we were making up a problem. You know what my daughter told me?
What's that?
She says, "Mom," she's very serious for a second. "Mom, you're still a really good nodder." Like, oh,
you may just need to embrace the nodding.
I may.
I'll have to let the interestings be what they are.
Maybe.
So
we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So, the other thing that we ended up going last time, we talked a lot about that shoulding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shoulding all over yourself. And we talked about that in between that episode and this one. We asked in our Facebook group, do you should on yourself a lot? Yeah. And that was a lot of what we had talked about. And certainly what we were just mentioning, people said that. And we had a really interesting transition at the end of the third episode where we started talking about relationships. It was almost like this automatic transition into that. And so I was thinking we would head there a little bit today.
Yeah.
That work?
That sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if last week was about shoulding on ourselves, this week is about shoulding on each other, shoulding on other people, shoulding on our relationships.
We have a lot of shoulds for other people.
Oh man, don't we?
Whoa. Yes.
Don't we? Okay. So where would you want to start with that? I know there's plenty of things you and I have talked about this week, but where would you want to start with that?
Right. You know, we talked a little bit at the end of our last show about this sort of like, if you'll be somebody that I want you to be, if you'll just be this, then I can be fully me. Right. So you should be this or do this. Then that means I can, be fully me.
And we would include, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be that way. That's the same thing.
Yes.
We're wanting somebody else to be a certain way.
Yes.
Either because they should be or shouldn't be something. Okay. Okay. And that is problematic.
Well, yeah, because we're trying to then focus on controlling something that's really outside of our control. We can control ourselves or influence ourselves or be in charge of ourselves or be the CEO of ourselves, but being the CEO of somebody else or in charge of somebody else doesn't really work very well. So we get quite worked up about all of that.
We do.
Yes.
We do. And I'm thinking back on every close relationship I think I've ever had that I think I've thrown out a lot of shoulds at times or should nots, that type of thing. And I think once upon a time for me when I was younger, it was about not having the language or the understanding or the awareness of being the CEO of myself and wanting other people to fit where I thought they should in my life. Now, but as I have grown older, and even with all the work I've done in other areas of my life, I've realized lately that the shoulds can still be really strong for me. They just come from different places. And the shoulds come sometimes for me from this idea that when I feel wronged by somebody or when I feel disappointed by somebody or a certain situation, then I really need to make sure that I am heard, that I am disappointed, that I am angry, because to be emotionally available, we hear all the time, you need to be able to express yourself. You need to be able to share your feelings, particularly with a close friend or a partner, a family member, that type of thing. And yet I've been wrestling a little bit with this idea that if I go back a week, that I've been sitting on emotions about something. If I go back 2 months or 2 years and say, back when you did that, or back when that happened, I was this way. Blah, 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 blah. I've always thought that's a good thing to do. I'm wondering what comes up for you with that. I'm sure you talk with a lot of your clients about that, because the tension for me, it seems, in this work is that that's not very present after a while. once you get out of the moment where you're feeling disappointed or let down or hurt, suddenly there's a shelf life for presence on those things.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, so I have some questions for you.
all right.
What is it that you're looking for when you've got to take your emotional states of the past to a particular person to express what those were? What do you know what you're looking for in that?
Connection,
Okay.
redress, right? I want something fixed. I want this out in the open.
Okay, so there was a
so I don't have to
problem
hold it. There was a problem
and you want it fixed.
and I want it fixed.
Okay.
And there's part of my mechanism historically has been let it out. You express your feelings, right? This is how I felt. This is how I'm feeling now. You get it out in the open. The other person hears it.
Mhm.
Hopefully, hopefully they hold it or they take it seriously and you work that together. And usually in those, particularly if it's about disappointment or being hurt,
Mhm.
I want an apology.
Okay.
I want to
Okay.
be seen and I want my side to be known and respected. And I know where this is going to a certain degree. I know where this is going because in the end, what that does, and this is maybe where my tension is or my dis-ease
Mhm.
is that's really wanting them to say what I need to feel
Yes. Yeah.
better.
Yeah. Yeah. You're wanting something from them,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're expecting something back when you're expressing your emotions that are no longer necessarily with you anymore.
Right.
They were last week's emotions, but I need to bring them to you, right? Because you're wanting something. There's a should that they should meet for you.
And I should say something because I care about this relationship and I should be taking care of myself and making my voice heard. Well, there's a lot of shoulds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
Mhm.
the weird thing about this, though, is I wonder if, as people are listening to this,
Mhm.
this is kind of like, people go, well, wait a minute. Does this mean we're not supposed to share our feelings?
Mhm.
So this is a little tangly.
It's very muddy and tangly. Yes. Because there's so many different layers here in terms of we're talking about like when are we present, when are we not present,
Mhm.
right? When are our emotions present, right? When do the emotions really matter? And we're also talking about sort of how we're engaging or this sort of like dance that we do with another person.
Dance.
Dance.
That's a good analogy.
We asked about dances on our Facebook
We
group.
did. It's almost like we planned to get here.
Almost like it. We were hoping. We loved the dancing. We're all doing the dancing, whether we're noticing that we're doing the dancing or not.
Dancing meaning in this context, whatever specific relationship we have with any person is a type of dance unique
Mhm.
to itself.
Yes.
So the dance you have with a friend is different than obviously the dance you have with your husband or with your
Probably.
daughter. Right. Right.
Probably.
with your daughter. Right. And so that sense that each
Mhm.
relationship we have is unique in its moves, in its
Mhm.
tempo, in its music.
Yes.
Maybe that's a good analogy to use here so we can get out of the
Mhm.
general.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's follow this out. So if this is dancing,
Mhm.
go.
Oh, go, dance, dance, right? We're exchanging energy and we're moving with each other or moving away from each other.
Mhm.
And we're stepping on each other's toes at times too with this dance. We're maybe not so skilled in certain areas with our friend or person that we're dancing with, or we are, or they're not so skilled in certain areas, and all of this is about the shoulds and the people pleasing and the boundary, all the ways in which we engage with each other and bring connection or protect ourselves from connection.
Mhm.
So then we're disconnected. And so there's lots of tanglings up of this. But when we're coming from a perspective of just like this, you should be somebody I want you to be so that I can be me. I mean, that's a dance in and of itself, but it's not a connected dance.
That's like a dancing where somebody's really forcing the lead
Yeah.
or really fighting the lead,
Mm-hmm.
which never goes well.
It doesn't go well. It might feel quite stimulating at first, maybe, like, oh, yeah, I feel right in this and the other person's wrong in this. And there's something to be done about this.
Mhm.
So certainly sometimes we get like revved up with that. But in the long run, for the long term, that's pretty exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think for the other person, after a while, maybe don't want to dance as much.
Maybe you don't want to dance as much. Or when, clients who come in to talk to me about wanting to shift their relationship, they want to do a different dance with their partner. They don't want to do the dance that they've been doing because there's a lot of connection like short periods of connection and then disconnection and then protection. And they're doing this shoulding with each other and on themselves in ways that it's not working for them anymore, and they want to do a different dance.
And what comes to mind for me is the challenge here is, how do we know? Well, it's not even how do we know. We're responsible for our own reactions to our own emotions. What I wonder about is, and how I've handled this before, if I'm taking my emotions and the responsibility for them, putting it on somebody else, hoping that they're going to fix it by their response.
Right. Well, that was my point of asking, what do you need when you go to someone to describe your feelings of a week ago? The feelings aren't even necessarily a problem now. Maybe they were intense a week ago. Maybe we kind of remember those feelings and we're like, we want the other person to know that they participated somehow, knowingly or not knowingly, in our feeling disappointed or hurt or sad or worried or anxious. And somehow they're supposed to do something differently about our emotional state.
And what happens if the other person wants to argue the point? Like, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. That's not what I meant. And suddenly it's snowballing into a argument about the past that's blowing up the present moment. And, earlier this week, I was kind of ruminating on some of these things and thinking about it. I've done that a lot in a lot of my close relationships, friendships, romantic, otherwise, where some of the worst moments were about trying to hash out what happened or how that was done or how that should have been done or how that should not have been done. And it didn't solve anything.
No, that's protection mode, because each person is kind of fighting for or standing up for their version of what actually happened.
Trying to muscle the other person into understanding their side.
Right. So here you are doing the dance of trying to convince the other person that you're the right one and they're the wrong one. And that's not present moment or connection at all. We're always going to have different perspectives of the content of our lives
than anybody else.
Right. Oh, and even in an exchange. I mean, we could be talking here, get to the end of our podcast and have some different perspectives about what actually went on. And we're like in here. There's not a lot of complication, but we would leave having some slightly different perspectives about what went really well, maybe what didn't, where we felt connected, where we didn't feel, or it could be a number of different things, right? But the reality is we're going to have different perspectives, how we bring those and how we dance with another person with those. So finding the truth of perspective, oftentimes in relationships we want to be connected in, isn't the point.
Right. So what is?
Well, understanding, connection, listening, being with.
Putting
right?
those two things side by side.
Yeah. We're disconnected when we're trying to prove our own point. Just because we're in the same room, don't fool ourselves. We are disconnected when we're trying to prove our own point because we have self more important than
and argument. Trying to defend your point.
Yeah.
That's a headspace rather than a connected space where you might be able to see things or care what the other person is seeing or feeling or okay. Yeah. Boy, I've done that a lot.
Well, don't we all?
Yeah.
Right? Because we've been taught to express ourselves, stand up for ourselves, advocate. And it's not a bad thing to do all of that because the alternative would be just to be like, oh, not doing that at all. Doormat. Nobody wants to do that either, right? But there's a fine line between sort of expressing what's needed in the moment so that we can stay connected and expressing ourselves just because we think we're right and we need to let the other person know that we are.
And we're wanting to let go of that energy. And so we vomit it on somebody else's shoes and call that a solution.
Yes.
Okay. Would a hypothetical example be good to go with here?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not even hypothetical. It's more of an amalgamation.
It's not even
How about that
hypothetical.
word?
Okay.
How about that word?
I don't even know what that word means.
It means a bringing together a generalized story that is true from a number of different sources. It's an amalgam.
Okay. I don't know what to say. So I'll just,
So it's the specific story is fictional, but it is taken from a number of true stories. Mainly it's a repetitive thing that has happened to me many times in the past. And maybe that will be helpful here. Okay. So let's say, with a person that I'm close to, something is coming up. I'm looking forward to something, conversation, time away, a visit, a night out, something like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen. I think it's coming and it doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen without, and when it happens, there's no warning, right? Like it just, right. It's, I have the friends and groups of people that I spend a lot of time with. A lot of them don't always, follow through with the things that we expect that they should.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A
There's
quick
that.
word or that type of thing. And oftentimes I'm okay with that because I'm kind of the same way. But if I've got my heart set on something or looking forward to something and then it doesn't happen and there's not an explanation, wow.
Yeah.
I can think of at least 5 or 6 different episodes in my life where that turned into not just hurt feelings or anger or frustration, but a million stories about what that meant, and then shoulds.
Yep.
Shouldn't have done that. Should have done this. Should have said something. Should have not, whatever. And then on the other side of it, they have no awareness, right? Or it's just you move on, right? Because maybe time goes by. Knowing me, once upon a time, I was going to hold it against them, be passive aggressive, not talk. And then because historically I'm kind of conflict averse, I don't want to go there. I want them to bring it up. I want them to apologize.
Know
you
what
own
they
it.
did wrong.
Own your shit.
Yes.
And bring that in. Okay. So let's take the hypothetical out that has happened. And a few days later, it's gone by. I haven't said anything. They haven't said anything. And have a conversation. And I have an opportunity to say something. I could say, that really sucked 4 days ago, whatever. Or particularly if I recognize that maybe I had some expectations, maybe I don't. That's the dilemma. That's the situation. What do you see there?
Yeah. So there's lots of different layers there too, right? Because depending on your level of expectation and looking forwardness to the particular thing and your expectation on the other person's level of commitment to you, right? Like there's already 3 things in that just before the other person shows up to the planned event, right? So those are all our responsibility, right? Like, okay, so what is my how am I going to be if we don't do this thing? What is my own level of expectation? And then what kinds of stories am I going to allow to for myself to ruminate on when or if this doesn't happen, right? So those are all our own responsibility. Now, certainly if you've got some level of commitment in this dance relational dance with somebody,
right,
where there was a sense of this get together being very important, and it being very important, and that dance is pretty that you do with the other person pretty communicative anyway, and this is out of character for them. Like that's probably something that you'd follow up on. Like this is way out of character for this person. And did something happen?
Right. Are they all right?
Are they all right?
Yeah.
Those kinds of things. But that type of situation, you're probably not going to go to all of the stories anyway.
That's more curiosity than shoulds or judgment, like and concern or care.
Yes.
Right. All right.
But if you've got a relationship where you're the kind of dance that you do anyways with this person, or it's not a level of commitment that tends to be a little more open and fluid, then having the expectation in the first place, or being really attached and then being devastated when and if it doesn't happen, like that's all on our storyteller,
Right.
right? So knowing the reality of the dance is really important, because otherwise what ends up happening is you go right to 3 or 4 days later, hey, that really sucked that you did that. Then you're arguing about the content, right? Especially if that type of dance is what you guys typically do anyway, right?
Right.
Or there's not a level of commitment.
Right.
Yes. Like when people first meet, like maybe you've met a person for the first time, you guys make an arrangement to meet each other again.
Specific day, specific time.
Yeah. Person doesn't show up. There's so much of the time we are just just outraged by that. Like, how disrespectful that person would not show up.
Right.
Well, we don't have any level of commitment. We barely met the person. Right? Like, why is it? We all know this, right? We definitely are focused on ourselves and how we feel, and meaning if somebody makes us, in quotes, feel a particular way, and we feel rejected or disrespected or somehow treated unjustly, right? Then we are wrapped up in the shoulds of the other person doing that to us.
And a lot of stories to go with it.
A lot of
that must
stories
mean
go
they're
with it.
this way. That must mean they do this.
Right. But that's the reality of how we do this human thing.
Right. Whereas you could, with curiosity, coming to that going, whoa. Because it could be a million things. It could be they got really nervous. It could be they changed their mind.
Totally. Right.
It could be, which then it brings up a real big question about how we view other people. Because I think if we were to turn that around and say, we might say, okay, if I got freaked out, I would at least send a note. I would at least say that. So, but let's go with the fact that they haven't. Suddenly now it seems to me, I'm in the driver's seat of deciding how that's going to drive my stories or how I'm going to respond to it in the present. That's suddenly mine, not theirs.
Absolutely. And I like to say the untrained brain or self, right? The brain wants to fill in the things we don't know.
Yeah, it does.
So we'll just make up all kinds of stuff.
Oh, man.
And maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe it can just be what it is. So-and-so didn't show up. Okay, well, that's life. And what do I want to do now?
Yeah, I keep thinking of like when you hold a party and you have all these people that you've said are going to come, and then some people you thought were going to come don't. For whatever reason. Right. And it might have been pretty open. My get-together is usually pretty open. I know some people are like, send out invites. You bring this, you bring this. I'm like, between 7 and 9, just show up. You coming? Oh, okay, great. And if they don't, then how do we respond to that? Now, we all, I think, have an awareness that people say they're going to show up and they don't. I have to decide if I'm going to take that personally or not.
Or decide why that person, like all of the whole stories. Do you need to make up a story about why and what the other person is doing or thinking or intending or, whatever. Do we need to do, that's a lot of energy to do that. And it takes us out of the present moment. And we are disconnected when we do that. We are just in our head, virtual reality, creating a story, not even in real time, like right now.
God. Yeah, it reminds me, I can think of several instances where I had felt aggrieved or disappointed because somebody either hadn't shown up for something well or that, and I wasn't saying anything about it. And I remember one time in particular, a few days later, I was having a conversation with that person, and that person opened the door. And I didn't go back and say, that bothered me, because I'd recognized on some level that I was having responses to my own stuff in all of this, that there wasn't all the things you mentioned. There wasn't a clear expectation. There wasn't a clear timetable. There wasn't any of those things. I also hadn't taken the step to reach out and say anything when I started to feel, oh, is this going to happen or not? And then when I had the opportunity, because to me, I guess the decision I made in that moment was, that's all my emotional stuff that's kicked up. And while I would be truthful if I shared it with this person, I was feeling this way, that way, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with in that moment where I'd had a conversation with this person that was very connected. It was very good. We were, everything was all right. Me holding on to those old things felt like it was on me, and it wasn't, it was on me to make sure I let that go rather than feel like I have to process this out because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right, right. The reality is I don't want to make light of feeling disappointed or not, when somebody tells us they're gonna meet us somewhere and they don't, like, just to brush it off and not care. Like, we're gonna have emotions about that. We're gonna feel disappointed because we were looking forward to a particular thing, or we're gonna feel maybe a sense of rejection in a moment, those kinds of things. But we don't have to, and that's okay. Like, those don't have to be a problem that we feel that.
Right. That's legitimate responses to those things.
And those are our feelings attached to our own level of expectation of another person. That's the point, as opposed to this person did this to me and made me feel this way. There's no real power in that. Like, where do we go from there? You've just made me feel a particular way.
Now what?
Now what, right?
The dance comes to a screeching halt.
Exactly. Or part of the dance becomes that I blame you for making me feel in such a way that I don't like. If I notice, oh, this happened in this dance. Oh, I felt this way about the happening of this part of the dance. Oh, do I need to feel this way about this? Am I okay with feeling this way? Is this just part of how this goes? And will it just be in the next couple of hours? I won't feel this way about this part of the dance because I'll get moving on another part of the dance, right? In present time and moment. So sometimes we hold on to those slights and stories attached to them. And then it becomes it disrupts the dance.
It does. And what I see and sense and feel when you talk about that is I stop seeing that other person and letting them be human, allowing them to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Or allowing them to just do things the way they do them.
Right.
And I have to decide whether I'm all right with that or not in that moment and going forward. Because at some point, relationships, dances stop.
Yes.
Sometimes. A lot of times. I mean, in the end, all relationships end, right? We all die.
They do.
So
we're gone.
We're gone. But that's, in some ways, that's that decision. We're not, not going to dance anymore. So, and that's the thing to me. And I look back on a lot of my relationships and I wonder, because of that dynamic of how I did the dance, want you to, first of all, way back when, not sharing anything and then just dumping everywhere, wanting to be seen, heard, which really meant I want you to agree with me and I want you to give ground and I want you to admit that I was right.
Yes.
In doing that, a lot of dances ended early. Yeah. Either because I was too angry, upset, aggrieved, feeling like a doormat, or they just got tired of it or whatever. Yeah. And that to me is the interesting part of in connection, giving that kind of grace to let people be human and not have to go over every single slight.
Yes.
Particularly when you know that it might be something that happens, right? Maybe that's part of the dynamic. Boy, but it's really, I'm finding it tough to really articulate because each context in each relationship is so unique. I guess what I'm trying to get at here for the sake of everybody listening and watching is that these shoulds in these kinds of dancings can just blow up everything, including ourselves, because I feel rotten in the middle of it. I can't remember a time where I've been throwing shoulds at somebody where I felt really good that I'm throwing. I mean, maybe in that perverse way of like, oh, I feel real strong.
Yeah. Of all the folks who have come into my office or on my video screen, whether they are a couple or whether they are a family or whether nobody as the person that is requiring another person to should whatever is feeling so happy and grand and joyful, right? They're not. And then the person that is required to meet all the shoulds, and that is a dance because sometimes we share that. It's not typically just one person requiring the shoulds and then the other person not. We're doing it to each other. At different points in time. I keep hitting this at different points.
Now you're not just nodding, you're like flailing.
I know. I'm trying to not nod. So I'm like flailing my arms and I keep hitting the
I
microphone.
like your ninja moves though.
Are they good?
They are good.
I've never practiced them, so that's cool. But yeah, nobody's feeling good. Nobody's feeling connected. We cannot be connected and be shooting ourselves or shooting others. We cannot connect with that. We limit their capacity. We limit our capacity. We cannot be present and we cannot be connected.
Wow. You cannot. That is stark and clear.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're connected, even if you're having a conversation that comes up around whatever that incident is, if you're connected, you can, in the end, have two perspectives.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I don't have to come at it from a position of anger. I come at it from curiosity.
Right.
Do you mind telling me what happened there?
Mm-hmm.
That was unlike you. Or I guess I had an expectation
and
it didn't get met. And I was just,
right.
What came up with that?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be that moment where the needle on the record scratches and the dance crashes to a halt or you step on each other's feet. You can actually just pause. It's really, really powerful.
And when we're able to share perspective and really hear perspective, we naturally meet each other. We don't have to be, it doesn't have to be a requirement.
To agree.
Right. Or I don't have to be clear, like you should do this so that you do this. I could say, I just curious, here I was sort of expecting this other thing, thinking that this should be what you should do. And I'm listening, and now I realize like that's not going to fit for you. And we naturally then just meet each other where we are without the effort and forcing and requiring and shoulding.
And then trying to figure out, I get the vision of arguing over percentages. This incident was 33% my fault and 67% your fault. And so because of that, you're wrong. Make the changes. Right. When in the end, wow, that kind of scorekeeping.
Oh, it doesn't ever work. Well,
and it dooms things.
Oh, completely.
After a while.
Yep.
And it sets patterns. Where that is seen as that's the dance. That's the dance. Yeah. And boy, this whole thing brings up a lot of questions about kind of the way we tend to understand what we're supposed to do about our feelings, about expressing them, how we do them in relationships. This must be, I'm making this up, but this must be for your clients that you work with couples, a massive hurdle in terms of their communicating. Like, but my feelings matter. And I was really hurt by this. And I was really upset by this. Whew.
Yeah.
Because those are the shoulds have triggered the stories about what the emotions mean, not the emotions themselves.
Right. So here's something that came up for me this week with a couple. So, one of the partners definitely subscribes to I'm having an emotion, I need to share it with you. The other partner perceives that as uncomfortable. And the other partner doesn't have the same intensity of emotions that partner one has. So neither one has to be bad. Neither one has to be a problem, and neither one has to meet the other where they're at, because that's not going to work either, right? But if we can agree to give space for whatever is there for either one, right? Then partner one doesn't actually have to get intense, because part of the reason why partner one is getting intense is because partner one doesn't feel heard by partner two, because partner two is trying to stay cool, calm, and collected, right? So if we give space for all the uncomfortable emotions that we have decided make for problems,
and don't make them bad,
and don't make that right, then we don't have to protect ourselves from them or use them in such a way to really get the other, right? So they're not as intense, they're not as suppressed, because there's no reason to have to suppress them. And we can just start to show up with what is real, and that we can all handle that with each other in the moment. We don't have to bring up, because this happens all the time. We're going to bring up stuff that happened decades ago.
Oh man.
Well, remember that time? Well, you've been doing this for years.
Always and never.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bombs in those conversations. Yeah.
Yeah. All of that's part of the dance.
Man, and it doesn't have to be.
No, we could have a totally different dance.
Totally different dance.
Yeah.
So the key there, of course, in those is that you have the partner one and partner two, who essentially the assumption has been they're not happy with how the other one does it. And so the tension point is trying to push in, push back, when accepting, putting them side by side and letting them coexist in the moment helps create the space, the patience, the openness to letting that be. And you actually can see what how the other person is.
Yeah.
Then you have to choose.
Yeah.
Do you want to stay with that or do you not?
Well, and if we go back to the nervous system, right? When we don't feel when we don't feel like the dance is connected, right? Then we're in fight or flight or freeze. When we're in and feeling connected, whether, our partner needs to be different in this moment because we're right. And both people could be feeling that at the same time, right? So when we can get into connected and safety, we can deal with all kinds of things with each other.
And realize that maybe the very things that are causing conflict don't even matter.
No,
I've experienced that a lot.
Right.
I've experienced that a lot in the last year since I've been doing this, year plus since I've been doing this.
Yeah.
And I think back to sometimes, and I have probably 3 or 4 really close relationships that can get these dynamics sometimes or have in the past. And I have a hard time remembering the specifics of what they were. I can remember what the specific problem was or what specifically happened after a while. Maybe that's a function of increased age, but I don't think so. I think
maybe
it is a little, but
who cares?
Come on, I want you to humor me here. Meet that need. Never mind. But I think to me, that's been one of the more profound things in this is after a while, the things that kick off my stories, my emotions, if they are things that just kick off stories that aren't true, after a short period of time, they're not going to hold a lot of energy anymore if I'm aware that they're stories and that they're mine to deal with. I don't have to have the other person. And it's funny because I would once upon a time would have said, but I'm keeping that from them.
Right.
When really it's not. I'm taking care of my own stuff.
Yep.
Because they don't deserve to have my junk. Right. Talk about debunking the junk.
Right.
They don't deserve to have that thrown at them so that they have to be the ones to fix it, address it, and clean it up.
Yeah. If we just worried about our own junk, we wouldn't have junk between each other. Right? Like you worry about your junk, I'll worry about my junk. I don't have to worry about your junk. You don't have to worry about my junk. Right. So then that simplifies things quite a bit.
It does. Because then if I know that, and I've made the conscious choice that, yes, this person I'm going to stay in relationship with, I'm going to dance with, knowing that when the junk comes up, I can just go, there's the junk.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
And what I can tell everybody listening, that is an amazing feeling when that happens, when you realize, no, it's all right. Something that once upon a time would have driven me through, sent me through the ceiling, right? Or spiraled me into story after story, and into depression in its worst forms. Nope.
Yeah.
That's just that junk. And I don't have to judge them for having that junk because holy moly, I've got my own junk.
Right. Just worry about your own junk. And I just want to remind listeners, right? Like when that shows up and because you might notice other people's junk more clearly as you're listening a little bit more, right? And you're still feeling uneasy with other people's junk, but you can kind of be like, okay, that is theirs, but I'm still like getting revved up about it.
Yeah.
That is the great time to recenter and reground and soften and smile on the inside like we did last week and sink into your belly and just remind yourself like that is their junk and that smile that you don't have to manage that. Right? That's theirs.
And it is interesting to experience. Yes, that's their junk. Yes, I don't like it. It's not what I would prefer in this moment. I still love them anyway. And that's I'm not going to bring all of this together into some way that's going to cause unnecessary conflict when it's my own stuff. For me, I know that I sometimes have to talk it out with people. Like I'll talk it out with you or I'll talk it out with people who, and kind of get a sense because I can't always see sometimes when it's my stuff
Yeah.
when it's somebody else's. But I think the awareness that is out there is the first thing. Like, okay, my stuff is, my junk is all in here somewhere. That awareness, particularly in presence work, is such a great thing by itself. And then for me, when I realized I was starting to remember, okay, I can breathe on this and go into the practice a little bit. It's pretty great.
Yes.
What comes out of that, because it simplifies everything.
Yeah.
I find myself these days, I worry so much less
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
my relationships or how I'm showing up or any of those things because of this. It makes things so much easier, and it's made my relationships better. I'm a better dancer, I guess.
Well, you're a more connected dancer.
Or connected dancer.
Right?
Maybe
You're
that's
not
a better way
off
to
in the
put it.
corner just doing your own thing. You're sort of
Or trying to force the lead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe you're like waltzing around the room. You know how they just like flows. That's just quite amazing, that flow that happens with the waltz.
It does. It does. And the experience of being in that flow with another person when you're connected. You just whack your head on the
I'm having
Microsoft.
so much trouble with this microphone today.
Did it stab you?
I just kind of like, again, it was the nodding thing. And then I hit myself with it. Anyways, keep talking. I'm sorry. I'm so distracting.
Nodding ninja moves.
Gosh.
What I was saying was to experience any kind of relationship with that kind of flow.
Yeah.
When you're connected and accepted, and the other person is connected and accepting, and you're not worried about what it means, you're not worried about where it's going to go, you're not worried about tomorrow, you're not worried about any of those things, it's about as actually not even about, it is the most human that I have ever felt in a good way, in the good way that we all really want to experience. And there's no shoulds in there.
Yeah.
There's no shoulds.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is. And it doesn't mean it's happening that way all the time. I don't want to make it sound like I can just drop into that with ease, but it's getting smoother. And the nice thing about that, as the brain and the central nervous system learn how to do this, it learns how to get you there a little faster. It sends you a little more reminders. Oh, you can do this. You can connect. You can connect. Builds that new muscle memory. That's great.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So as we take out the shoulds or the people pleasing type stuff or the expectations, as we start to shift out of those stories, we get to be in the body faster, more consistently. And that practice becomes easier and easier, because if we're softening, smiling, and sinking into the belly, and then we're going straight up into our head with all the stories and the talk that we do, then we're not really practicing the practice of presencing, so that we can have the experiences that you're talking about, right? Like, we've got to be in reality, not making up stories. There's a big difference, making up stories in reality. So even checking, like, am I in reality? Am I making up stories? Right.
Right.
Yeah. In the past or the future, you're not in reality. You're making up stories about either one.
And in case someone's wondering, how can you in the moment when you're activated and your emotions are running and you're wondering if there's stories going, how can you find reality? I have found, for me at least, to recall and even say to myself, in this very moment, I am safe. I'm safe right here. I'm not in any danger. Nothing is physically threatening me. Nothing is emotionally threatening me. I'm okay in this moment. And that is all I need.
Yes.
That can help me. I do that oftentimes if my stories are really kicking off when I'm going to bed. I can get into that space and go, I'm okay laying right here on my side with my head on the pillow. And I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'll be fine.
Yes. And the other part you can add to that, especially if you're laying in your bed, well, you can do this anywhere, is that softening part.
Yes.
Sort of just repeating that word soften and then soften some more. You can literally, I do this at night, I can literally keep sinking into my mattress, like further into my mattress than you ever thought possible.
Just by saying soften.
Just by saying soften and releasing a little bit more. You notice your shoulders and your back and your thigh. Like you just sink even further. I know. It's like so great. So even practicing with that will release tension, will just allow for more flow. When we're soft, we flow. When we're rigid, we don't flow.
Right. And things are harder than they need to be.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Whew. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So last week was about shooting on ourselves. This week was about shooting on others. Relationship. There's a lot to chew on here.
Yes.
If you have questions or comments or wondering, you can join our Facebook group page. Just look up Breaking Up with Our Bullshit and you'll find it. You can join. It's doesn't cost you anything. And we post other material between episodes here and there, sometimes giving hints about what we're going to talk about, sometimes other things. So you can join us there. You can look for us on Instagram. Stay tuned for Twitter. That's coming as well. That'll be good. And if you have topics you'd like us to talk about, you can reach out to us at buobthepodcast@gmail.com.
Yep.
Or on those social media sites. And of course, we would be happy to host any of you if you want to come on the show, or you want to share a story that you're trying to break up with and have us troubleshoot it for you. Any of those things, feel free to reach out and do that. So
yeah.
What else you got?
Fantastic. I got nothing because we're about out of time.
We are about out of time.
Yeah.
This goes so fast.
It goes really fast.
Right. And now I feel like I want to soften back into the chair.
I know. I know.
Yeah. So anyway,
yeah.
Did we debunk some junk?
I feel like we did debunk some junk.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop shitting over people. Cheers.
Cheers. All right. On that note, thanks for joining us on Breaking Up with Our Bullshit. Ooh, all right. That's enough. We'll see you.
I know.
We'll see
next
you
time.
next
Yeah,
time.
we're done.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
I'm in my groove. Here we go. Break a friend. I need it up front.
To be right, everybody else to be wrong.
I got something to prove.
A new man has come into my life, and I'm going to stay here in New York to see what it is about him that intrigues me so.